So Nigel Farage is back in the media and he is back in politics, not just politics, but frontline politics. He recently announced that he is the new leader of Reform as Richard Tice effectively gives way to Nigel and stands down, is essentially demoted to party chairman of Reform. But furthermore, Nigel actually announced that for the 8th time he's going to be standing as a candidate for Parliament, that is in the Clacton constituency. As I say, this is for the 8th time. Nigel has tried 7 times, but all of them unsuccessful. Why I think he did this? Well, my first query is whether all of it was a deliberate, pre-planned electioneering move by Reform to gain support, gain momentum and gain votes. The reason I say this is because I never really bought the timing argument. That is, when Nigel first announced that he wasn't going to be standing, he stated it was because of the bad timing of the election. 6 weeks, the campaign was just being 6 weeks, was not enough time to campaign locally, regionally as an independent MP, as well as nationally on behalf of Reform. But I never really bought that because in Nigel's interest, we know he wanted to do something in the USA as part of Trump's campaign. It made sense. An early election was useful because it allowed him time to cover the British election. We know he's a patriot, and go over to the USA with plenty of time, as of course their election is on the 5th of November. I think perhaps more realistically though, I think Nigel's actually just bruised by the reaction to his announcement that he wouldn't be standing. Many of his supporters, many of his campaigners and many of his biggest fans, who of course were with him up through the grassroots UKIP days all the way through his kind of peak pinnacle of support in the Brexit referendum, felt like they had let him down at the most important moment. And also I think when he was campaigning nationally with Reform, he went up to Ashfield with Lee Anderson, he was in Skegness and Boston with Richard Tice. I think he was simply shocked by the energy, support and passion that there is and has been recently for Reform. He realised on the ground, whilst he was canvassing, and of course he still canvasses in that traditional way, that something is happening in British politics. There is room, there is desire, and there is space for a potential realignment of the right in particular in British politics. Going into the detail, he will be standing in Clacton, that is the Essex constituency that he is very familiar with. Of course, it was Douglas Carswell who won the only UKIP seat in 2015. UKIP won 4 million votes and that only translated to 1 seat. That was hugely bruising for Nigel and was the last time he stood as an MP in British politics. As I say, he's standing in that Clacton constituency that he knows very well. I think he is likely to win. He is up against a Tory incumbent who is fairly popular locally. He garners 77% of the support in the 2019 election. He won 77% of the popular vote. That is quite a high percentage, and so he is up against a strong incumbent Conservative candidate. Nonetheless, I think he will win and finally shut down the arguments that he has lost 7 times as he stood as an MP. However, I don't think most of this to be true, because most of the time when Nigel was standing as an MP, people say he's lost 7 times trying as a candidate, but I simply don't buy that, because when he was standing, UKIP were essentially a pressure group. It was a grassroots movement and they weren't expecting to win the seat. They were simply doing it to bring traction and garner support to their movement. So I simply don't buy that. And the time he tried properly in 2015, it was very close, of course, in South Thanet. And the Conservative Party and third-party private companies put large sums of money and resources into the seat to make sure Nigel didn't win. So I simply don't buy that argument. But anyway, what does all of this mean? Well, it means the Tories will be totally wiped out. It is Rishi Sunak was... He called as I previously stated, he called the election to try shut down Farage. A short campaign was not enough time for Reform to mobilise Farage and troops on the ground, and Rishi Sunak played that card well. He caught out Farage, but now he has been caught out by Nigel Farage. In a recent MRP poll, it showed the Conservatives could hope for 100 seats at best, but I think they'll be looking more towards 70, 75 seats at best, with Nigel now standing. All the momentum is behind Reform UK, and I think that will be their key, is building momentum throughout the campaign. They've had a strong campaign. There was lots of energy for Farage as he announced his candidacy in Clacton today. Huge numbers of troops on the ground, huge numbers of supporters gathering, and if Reform can break through that electoral threshold, which often happens around 10 or so seats, they will do very well and take large numbers of seats off of the Lib Dems. And all of this for reform, what does it mean for reform themselves? Well, on a short term, they are looking at, on a short-term campaign, they are looking to be the opposition. The Conservative Party, no doubt, are going to be in opposition. Labour are winning, that's done. The Conservative Party will, in numerical terms, be in opposition, but they won't be the opposition. And that is what Reform hopes to be, a voice of genuine ideological, political and philosophical difference to the Labour Party, who are going to win. And on a longer term, it's about a 6-year plan. It's about the 2029 election, where Reform, after a successful campaign and hopefully a successful election this year, hope to eventually have some leverage against the Conservative Party and begin to realign the centre-right of British politics for good. This is an existential threat to the Conservatives that they are facing now.